Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely pumped you're here today because we're jumping straight back to January of 1815 to unpack one of the most wild, frankly shocking battles in all of American history. Picture this. The War of 1812 is basically winding down. Actually, diplomats are already hammering out a peace deal. But over in the swamps just outside New Orleans, Louisiana, thousands of American and British soldiers are about to clash. It's a moment of just incredible tension, sky-high stakes, and some serious tactical genius.
Which brings us to the big question we're looking at today. How on earth did a ragtag makeshift militia actually defeat the greatest, most powerful military force on the planet? I mean, really think about the sheer underdog nature of this fight. On one side, you've got the mighty British Army. We're talking highly experienced, battle-hardened veterans who literally just helped take down Napoleon in Europe. And standing in their way? An American force led by this tough, deeply ambitious general named Andrew Jackson. Jackson had fewer trained troops, way fewer resources, and yet he's about to pull off a mind-blowing victory.
Section 1, the Prize of New Orleans.
Okay, let's dive right into exactly what was at stake here. The British weren't just marching through the Louisiana swamps for the scenery, right? They had their eyes on a massive prize. Basically, control the Mississippi River and you control America's trade. New Orleans was strategically vital because it sat right at the mouth of that river, and the Mississippi wasn't just water, it was the absolute lifeblood of the country's trade and transportation. If the British captured New Orleans, they'd have a stranglehold on the entire Mississippi Valley. We're talking a total chokehold on the nation's economy. The British knew this, which is exactly why they sent such a massive expedition. And looking at the two sides, wow, it was a complete mismatch. On one hand, you have the British Army under Major General Edward Pakenham. He's a highly experienced officer leading disciplined, heavily tested Napoleonic veterans. And waiting for them is Andrew Jackson's army. It's this wild, chaotic mix of regular soldiers, local militias, sailors, volunteers, just an incredibly diverse hodgepodge of defenders. On paper, Pakenham's European veterans should have absolutely steamrolled this group without even breaking a sweat. Section 2. Jackson's defensive masterclass. So, Jackson knew he had one massive advantage. He knew the terrain. He also knew that a traditional open-field battle against the British was a guaranteed loss. So, he pulls off this brilliant three-step tactical move. First, he picks a defensive choke point just south of the city, right near the river. Second, he has his men build this massive fortified defensive line. They're digging deep trenches, piling up earthworks, dragging cannons into the mud, literally using whatever they could find to build a wall. And third, and this is the real genius part, by blocking that choke point, he ensured the British would have to march over completely open ground to get to them. Jackson's guys would be fully covered, and the British would have absolutely nowhere to hide. But, building those kinds of defenses takes time. So when the British forces got dangerously close on December 23, 1814, Jackson didn't just hunker down. He really leaned into his reputation as this hyper-aggressive commander, launching a fierce, surprise night attack right into the British camp. It was brutal, chaotic fighting in the pitch black. Now, it didn't defeat the British, but it did exactly what Jackson needed it to do. It stalled them. It slowed their advance just enough to buy his men the precious time they needed to finish digging those main defenses. Both sides totally knew the real decisive showdown was still coming. Section 3, the battle explodes. January 8th, 1815. That brings us to early January. The tension in the air is just thick. The British have gathered this massive force, and their commanders are completely confident their elite troops will smash right through Jackson's makeshift mud walls. It's the morning of January 8, 1815. Just picture the scene. Thousands of British soldiers start marching forward across that open ground. Their bright red uniforms are popping in the morning light. You can hear the steady, menacing beat of their drums, right? Regimental flags snapping in the wind. Officers barking orders, keeping everyone in tight formation. And behind the American defenses, dead silence. Jackson's soldiers are just crouched down behind their mud walls, weapons ready. Their orders are incredibly strict. Do not waste your ammo. Hold your fire. Aim carefully. The British are getting closer and closer and closer until Jackson finally gives the word, fire, and the battlefield just erupts. American artillery opens up, sending these massive shockwaves right across the field. Hundreds of rifles unleash a deadly volley from the absolute safety of those earthworks. The noise is just deafening. The British, to their credit, bravely try to push forward, but remember Jackson's trap. They are entirely exposed out there. Every single step brings them closer to the American guns. The whole assault just starts to collapse.
General Pakenham himself bravely rides out to try and rally his terrified men, but he's hit and mortally wounded, and other senior officers start falling right after him. Without their leaders, that famous British discipline just completely vanishes. The attack dissolves into total chaos. With literally nowhere to take cover, the surviving British troops have no choice but to desperately fall back. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer, mind-boggling scale of Jackson's triumph here. The British suffered thousands of casualties, killed, wounded, or captured. It was an absolute disaster for them. Meanwhile, the American losses behind those thick mud walls, barely a fraction of that. Jackson had done the impossible. By combining terrain, preparation, and strict discipline, his hodgepodge army had completely dismantled a vastly larger, way more experienced enemy.
Section 4. A war already over. The tragic twist. Now, what's really interesting about this, and honestly it's one of the most mind-bending twists in all of American military history, is that everything we just talked about, the night attacks, the artillery, the tragic loss of life, it all happened in a war that was already technically over. Yeah, on December 24th, 1814, American and British diplomats in Belgium had officially signed the Treaty of Ghent. On paper, the war was done. But, it's the early 19th century. There's no Wi-Fi, no text messages. News had to cross the ocean on a ship, which took weeks. So on January 8th, over 2 weeks after peace was signed, thousands of men fought and died in the mud outside New Orleans. It is just a staggering piece of dramatic irony. These guys were bleeding for a conflict that had already been resolved.
Section 5. A legendary, ironic victory. A lasting legacy.
Eventually, the news of the peace treaty finally makes its way to Louisiana, and the fighting immediately stops. The War of 1812 is officially in the history books. Yet, because this battle was the last major clash before that news arrived, New Orleans was cemented as the war's most spectacular victory for the U.S. And the legacy of this? It's massive. First off, it became this incredible symbol of American resilience. It proved that, hey, determined soldiers using smart defensive earthworks really can hold their own against elite European armies. But maybe the biggest takeaway is what it did for Andrew Jackson. It transformed him overnight. He wasn't just a tough general anymore. He was an undisputed national hero, the guy who beat the British. That surging popularity just kept growing for years, ultimately carrying him all the way to the White House as the 7th president of the United States. This one battle literally defined his life. Which leaves us with this final, really fascinating question to ponder. How does a battle that technically shouldn't have even happened end up forging a presidency and cementing a permanent American legend? It is for sure one of history's strangest and most profound ironies. A spectacular victory fought in the ghost of a finished war, yet one that shaped the American identity for generations. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a fresh perspective on the Battle of New Orleans, and I absolutely can't wait to dive into our next topic with you.